What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Woodward Bets back here on a Tuesday. Beer and Scott ready to break everything down in the fantasy and gambling industry we had last night. We're going to recap Monday Night Football, take an early look at some Week 5 waivers, try to help you out in that department, take a look at some of the injuries which are causing some of these waiver wire pickups, and, of course, baseball playoffs starting today. Let me bring in Scott here. Scott, I know you're a big baseball guy. NFL is my favorite, but I do like me some baseball, especially when my team is in it. So we talked a little bit about my Brewers yesterday, but welcome in, my man. How are we feeling? A lot on the docket here for a Tuesday.
Yeah, that was a Monday Night Football game. I stayed up a little bit last night, had me a couple of those adult beverages. So I was feeling a little fuzzy this morning, but I got up and started looking into some different waiver stuff. And like you were mentioning, I was a Montgomery owner. My team had a lot of plus marks on it, a lot of my teams. So spent some time just kind of looking at stuff like that. And then, big thing too is we got the first waiver weeks coming up next week, week 6. So always smart to look ahead, obviously. So the Atlanta, New Orleans, Jets, and San Fran have buys next week. So it's a good thing to be able to look ahead and at least prepare yourself a little bit for that as well.
Yeah, we talked about this. I'm a big proponent of being more than just this week. 90% of fantasy owners are worried about this week. What does the lineup look like? I like to project out a little bit. It's hard to go too far. We know injuries are such a big part of the game, but at least looking ahead to buys, setting up your defense, looking at the matchups for your quarterback if you only have one, your tight end if you only have one, so many different things. So I tend to look ahead 2 to 3 weeks and try to get things lined up. So it's a great point. I think that in itself can be a major advantage for you against your league mates. So we'll continue to discuss some of those strategies as we get into the show. But, Scott, I want to dive right into things here today. First of all, tomorrow, KMA, Wednesday. So make sure you guys send your KMAs. Who burned you? A player, a team, a league mate, whoever it may be. Hell, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars owner, you're sending an Urban Meyer. He burned you with all these videos and things. So at Woodward Bets on Twitter, go ahead and give us a follow over there. Send us your KMAs for Wednesday. We also want your sit starts, your trades, whatever it may be in your fantasy leagues. We're going to cover those every single Friday. So send those to us as well. Again, at Woodward Bets, the network at Woodward Sports. Scott is at G_Risen. I am at Beer Makers Fan. All right, we got all that out of the way, Scott. Let's jump in to the show here today. So we want to start with injuries. As we know, NFL, it's all about the injuries, and we had quite a few of them, unfortunately, this week. So a couple quarterbacks here. Jimmy Garoppolo, a calf injury, maybe Trey Lance time there in San Francisco. It's going to be right now, maybe for the next couple weeks. We'll see if he takes over as a full-time starter to the end of the season. Teddy Bridgewater, a concussion, so maybe Drew Lock season there. Not as exciting as we get with Trey Lance. A lot of running backs here and a couple big names here. You mentioned David Montgomery. Goes down with a knee injury. Fortunately, not a season ender, but sounds like he's going to miss anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. So we're going to see Damien Williams step up as the lead back there in Chicago. Joe Mixon goes down with an ankle. One of my favorites, Scott. I have a ton of Joe Mixon across all my leagues, across my dynasty league. So Samaje Perine time there. Maybe even a little Chris Perry there for Cincinnati. We'll talk about those guys. Tony Jones, back up to Alvin Kamara in New Orleans, dealing with an ankle injury. Wide receivers, a lot of receivers going down here. DJ Chark, broken ankle there. So should be more opportunity for Marvin Jones, for Laviska Shenault. Will Fuller, again, a guy that's perpetually on this list. I swear every single week, Will Fuller is a guy we talk about, but dealing with a hand injury. So, again, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker should benefit from that. Even Mike Gesicki, he's a guy you've talked about a lot, Scott. Diami Brown in Washington dealing with a knee injury. They get Curtis Samuel back, so that's a name to keep an eye on. Josh Reynolds for the Titans, another Titans wide receiver. We'll see if A.J. Brown, Julio Jones are able to make it back. Another Washington injury to Logan Thomas, hamstring injury, out a few weeks there. So Ricky Seals-Jones expected to step in there. And Rob Gold, a late scratch. Kind of, it sucks when a kicker affects you, but I had a few shares of Robbie Gold across all my teams, and no news. Guy gets hurt in pregame, and you take the zero on that one. So it sucks. I'm trying to get rid of kickers in all my leagues. I know they have their supporters in some places, but I am not one of them. Let's get rid of the kickers. Let's be done with it. So those are the
Yeah.
major injuries. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, we'll see when he's able to come back. Dalvin Cook still looks a little bit banged up, did not look 100% healthy in that game. So, Scott, of all these injuries here, there's quite a few noteworthy ones. I think the big ones, obviously, Montgomery, Mixon, some of the receivers, and then the Trey Lance era, maybe starting here in San Francisco. So, discuss the ones you think are most important, least important, however you want to cover it. A lot of injuries to talk about here as we head into week 5.
Yeah, Damien Williams was the interesting one for me with Montgomery. I do actually have both guys, Montgomery and Mixon. As you had mentioned, you have quite a bit of shares of Mixon, but I think Damien Williams is going to get 4 to 5 weeks of run here with that Bears offense. So, I mean, he showed a little bit of flash in Kansas City. He does have, just looking ahead at some of his opponents, he's got the Vegas Raiders, he's got the Packers, and then he has Tampa and then San Fran. So 2 of the matchups are okay, decent. The other 2 is kind of scary, especially with Tampa. San Fran, as we know, has decent D-line as well. So, I would feel comfortable for sure using him in 2 of the weeks. But I mean, if you have Montgomery and you're using him as a starter, Damien Williams probably should be at the top of your list. You mentioned Pirine with the Bengals. I mean, Mixon's only day-to-day, so we're not even sure yet if Mixon's going to be out on Sunday. They haven't announced. We're going to have to keep an eye on him if he's practicing on Friday. Really good news for Mixon owners. Friday for me is like a big day that I really like to discover the injury report, just kind of see who missed practice. And then you mentioned Trey Lance. I'm gonna. The young kid, you're right. I think that's a situation for me that's similar to the Justin Fields situation. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not in a spot where I'm really hurting for a quarterback. I do see the upside. I think that's more of a DFS kind of play to keep in mind as we move forward. It's just going to be tough for me to play him, over a top, 10 or 12 quarterback right now in the league, especially in season long. So, but yeah, that's interesting. I think him coming in there, but if he catches fire, starts running him in, runs all around, and is that dual threat quarterback and throws the ball around, then definitely I'll be interested in that. But for now, I'm not running out to pick up Trey Lance.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, most people are probably set at quarterback. If you're in a super flex league, he's already owned. He's not going to be sitting out on your waiver wire. There's usually no quarterbacks available. So it's tricky. The one thing I'll say is their schedule is amazing throughout the season, especially their playoff schedule. They have it's set up for success for him, gives him time to acclimate. So as long as you have somebody else you feel comfortable with while Trey Lance acclimates himself, maybe he's not the starter for the rest of the year. Maybe Garoppolo comes back a couple weeks. I think it's only a matter of time before it is Trey Lance. So I would definitely make a move on him. The upside is certainly tantalizing. And don't be afraid. You see Justin Fields kind of struggle. Zach Wilson has kind of struggled. Trevor Lawrence. These guys are going to get it going. Sometimes it takes some time there. So the upside is what you're after. We want to win leagues. We just don't want to play in leagues. We don't want to cash in leagues. We're here to win leagues, and guys like Trey Lance certainly help us do that. So anything else here in the injuries, Scott, before we transition over to some waiver wire pickups here for week 5?
No, I can't say, as far that anything that really stuck out to me. It's kind of like a boring week unless you did suffer the Montgomery injury. So, there isn't. The first 3 or 4 weeks, generally 2 or 3 weeks, I should say, have a lot of the guys that maybe overlooked in drafts that, are getting more playing time than we expected. And we're starting to get in them murky waters here where, these guys have been picked through 3 or 4 weeks now. But like I said, we're coming up on some buys. So just dive into your teams and make sure you're covered for a few weeks and at least keep in mind and know what you need. Somebody may drop somebody, too, on the waivers after this week that maybe could help you right away next week. If your waivers are locked, then obviously, you're locked. But some leagues are just free fire right after everybody's dropped. So, make sure you get in there and check it out. Like I said, with them week 6 buys coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few different strategies is look at the teams at the bottom, the teams that are 0-4 right now, 1-3 right now. and see what you can do. And you try to help them out. Where are they weak? What do they need? What do you have that can help them? So I think going and searching out some of those teams, some performers that, a Robert Woods type that really hasn't performed yet, go and look at them. Also, like you mentioned, when the buys hit, good teams are going to be forced to make some tough decisions. So there's going to be names on the waiver wire that you did not expect. So it's a great point. So make sure you're scouring that, keeping an eye on who was released, and being active. It's, to me, the most important part is not the draft. It's the in-season management, the pickups at the right time, and all that
Agreed.
stuff. So you have to be active in these leagues. If you're in too many, it can become a job. So, trust me, I know, but I still have the passion for it. Tuesday night is waiver night. I'll be spending a few hours combing through everything and looking ahead. So just make sure you're very active in the waivers. So let's give you some of the guys that we are looking at here for Week 5. You mentioned Damien Williams, Scott. He obviously headlines the list here. I think you're going to get 3, 4, 5 weeks. He dealt with a little bit of injury in that last game as well, but he is expected to be the lead back, a guy that we've seen be successful. It was great with the Kansas City Chiefs. So as bad as this offense has been, he's a pass catcher. If you're in a PPR league, I think he's certainly very capable there. Another running back, Samaje Perine, we just mentioned. I think he, like I said, more of a short-term play, even shorter term than Damien Williams. It gets a good matchup with Green Bay this week. A defense you can certainly run on here. So I wouldn't go crazy on Perine. Yeah, I wouldn't go crazy on, I wouldn't break the bank on him or anything, but certainly guy that running back's been ugly this year. A lot of teams out there are struggling to find one running back to play, let alone 2 or 3. So to me, the more you can load up on your bench, we know injuries are going to happen. Perine's certainly a guy that you're going to want to stash here. Dawson Knox at the tight end position, really the only tight end of note here. Maybe you lost Logan Thomas. I would make Knox a priority in that sense. Trey Lance, we already talked about. If you need a quarterback, even if you don't, stash the upside on your bench if he's available in your league. Then a lot of wide receivers here this week, Scott. We have Jamison Crowder finally healthy, back in that offense. We know rookie quarterbacks are going to lean on certain guys. We saw Sam Darnold doing it with Jamison Crowder. I think you'll see the same here with Zach Wilson. Has a good rapport with Corey Davis. Jamison Crowder gives them those short targets, easy passes, easy completion. So don't hate him. Josh Reynolds with the Titans. That one not so ecstatic about. They have guys like Chester Rogers and Nick Westbrook. We'll see if Julio and A.J. Brown are coming back. So wouldn't go crazy with Reynolds. Khalif Raymond kind of in the same boat with Detroit. We talked about that yesterday. Just never going to know who's it going to be. Is it going to be Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hawkinson? So great game out of Raymond, but I'm not trusting it. Randall Cobb in the same boat. No Marquez Valdez-Scantling last week, so he did get some opportunity. The thing you could say about Cobb, Aaron Rodgers loves him. He went out and made sure that Randall Cobb was a part of this team. So I'm more optimistic about him in a good offense. The quarterback likes him, and it's a quarterback that if he don't like it, he ain't throwing you the ball. It's simple, and he has something here with Randall Cobb. So I wouldn't expect 2 touchdowns every week, but I wouldn't hate adding him to the bench. Some streamer plays for the week. Guys like Mo Alley Cox coming off a big game. Tough to trust that. Cameron Breit should get more opportunity with Rob Gronkowski dealing with an injury. Brissett at the quarterback position, more so in a super flex league. If you need some upside, we saw C.J. Uzomah have a big game for Cincinnati. Again, tight end's ugly. I don't think he'll ever have a game like that again in his life, coming off 2 touchdowns. But if you need the depth, and then Zach Wilson, another quarterback option. So not a ton. We wanted to rip off as many names as we can. We understand some of your leagues, none of these guys are available. Some of your leagues, all of these guys are available. So wanted to kind of cast a wide net, make sure we name a lot of the guys that are in the majority of your leagues that are going to be on waivers here. I mean, there's other names. If Kenneth Gainwell's available for Philadelphia, Alex Collins looked good with Seattle, and Chris Carson may be dealing with some injuries. So those are some deeper names, especially Collins I like. But Scott, I've rambled enough here. A lot of waiver wire pickups. I don't think there's anyone to break the bank for outside of maybe Damien Williams here. Who are some guys that you're adding, maybe avoiding? Thoughts here on the waiver wire list?
Yeah, I had to kind of chuckle when you mentioned C.J. Uzomah. I was hanging out the other night, and our boy Adam for the morning show texted me and said, "Hey Scott, I'm in a tight end mess. Look at these tight ends I have. I have Ozuma, and then who would you play?" And I said, "Well, who's on the waiver wire? Is one of these Eagles tight ends, Ertz or somebody like that?" It was kind of slim pickings, and so I told him I'd probably pick up somebody, and there was a couple decent guys on the waiver wire, and I told him, yeah, maybe I'd just go for Ertz and see what happens there. And of course, Uzuma scores 2 touchdowns, so uh, I kind of chuckled at that. It's just the evilness of this game that we play, but I had to laugh. But just mention some of these guys here. Cameron Breit, he got quite a few looks last the other game from Brady here when they were in New England. He overthrew him a couple times. He dropped a couple. I mean, he was in position to have a pretty good game, a lot better showing than he had. And Zach Wilson, obviously, we've been like to go after Atlanta. So they get Atlanta this week. With that in mind, I think that, you could use him if you're in a pinch, like a streamer, like you said. But Sam Pirine, he's just definitely a insurance policy for you this week for any kind of mixing owner. You might just want to go after him. At least you got him on your bench, and it gives you that flexibility at game time to put one or the other in. And then Damien Williams for me definitely is going to be my top guy that I'm going after this week. So hey, I think in one of my leagues that's important, I got a top 5 pick. So I'm going to hope a couple of these guys are snoozing and don't pick up Williams, but probably won't end up getting them. But hey, I always got to put in that waiver just in case we get some guys that are taking a snooze at the wheel.
Yeah, I'd rather be overly aggressive on the wire than sit back and kind of do nothing. Unless you're sitting at 4-0 and things are good and your depth looks good, then don't feel like you have to make a move, even in that sense. So you still want to stay active. And I believe I said Chris Perry earlier. I got my Michigan running backs mixed up. Chris Evans there with Cincinnati, a guy I think more of a deeper play. Yeah, I'm going back in the time machine here with my Michigan running backs, but Chris Evans, I think, is interesting with Cincinnati as well. You mentioned, we'll see what Joe Mixon. I think he's going to be out a couple weeks. I don't see why they would rush him back here. So Pirine's the headliner, but Evans the guy I think you can kind of sneak in and steal. So let's mention the sponsor of the show, Underdog Fantasy. I hope you guys are familiar with it. One of my personal favorites is Underdog, especially before the season starts, but they have a lot of stuff when the season's going down. So we know we got 4 weeks in the books here. You can still draft a new team on Underdog every single week to win cash prizes. You can use their mobile app. They also have a website. Either way, I prefer the mobile app. You can join a league, draft a team literally in minutes, Scott. It's fun to knock out a quick draft whenever you're sitting at soccer practice or whatever it may be. So tons of fun. Plus, the folks at Underdog are going to help you get started with a free $10. That's right, free. Use promo code WSN on your first deposit. That's WSN, Woodward Sports Network. $10 free on that deposit. So again, UnderdogFantasy.com or find the app in the Apple App Store, Google Play. Sign up with the code WSN. All you have to do, deposit $10. You'll get a free $10. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code WSN. So Scott, any underdog drafts for you lately? I'm love the in-season drafts as well. Basketball is 2 weeks away here, so another can load up on some basketball teams. Just a ton of cool stuff going on at Underdog right now.
Yeah, I up until here recently, I've been on so many different platforms. New ones are all coming out. Yeah, and Underdog has been pretty popular in the industry for sure. But what I like is you can bet on different little props too during the week too. So it's just not, the draft, different things. They have all kinds of different contests. So yeah, I like to kind of get on there and use them as a gauge too for even some DFS contests. I kind of like to use that as information. When I'm building my teams or lineups, you can kind of get like a gauge, like, hey, this guy's expected to get this many yards, or this guy's expected to get this type of, this many catches. So I like using that app and been on there quite a bit recently. And they got that contest from week 6 to week 17. So we got a whole nother week or almost 2 weeks now that they're having like their small little millie tournament. It's best ball. You set it, you draft it and forget it. So that's a lot of fun. I know a lot of the guys that I, talk to, and a lot the guys we deal with in the DFS industry, Chris, are really into that, into the best balls. I did a few of them when they were on FanDuel, but yeah, it's kind of moved around a little bit different. But this year I was so consumed in everything else, I didn't get the chance to do too many. But hey, I'm going to make it up and get in there on some for this Week 6 contest. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, the beauty of Underdog, they have something for everybody. Whether it's buy-in, you can buy in as little as $1 up to the big dog tournaments and different tournaments, different, like I said, prop contests. So go and check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way, like I said, to get prepared for weekly DFS. I love it in the preseason, getting prepared for my season-long drafts. To me, there's no better way to mock draft than to do it with money on the line. I'm sure we've all been in those mock draft lobbies where some idiot takes a kicker in the second round and the whole draft is shot. You don't really get accurate results. Where Underdog, everyone's putting their money on the line. The drafts have some meaning. So there's a lot of different ways to use Underdog. But again, support the show here. If you enjoy what we're doing, you enjoy fantasy, I promise you you're going to like Underdog Fantasy. Promo code WSN. All right, Scott, let's dive into some early lines. We like to take a look at some Week 5 lines, try to jump in, try to find some lines that we want to get on early here. So I'm going to rattle. You know what? Let's just find a few that we like. We don't need to rattle them all off here. Everyone knows the line. So anything standing out here early on with these early release lines, whether it's a spread, a total, anything seem pretty far off that you want to jump on, we'll have it up on the screen as well. So no need for me to rattle it off. What are you seeing here, Scott, in Week 5 that we can take advantage of here in the early markets?
Usually, like I said, the early markets, I really like to look at, teams that are good for the numbers, that are good for the teasers. So right away, our team, the Detroit Lions, are playing at Minnesota. They got them at a -7.5. It's over 7. I like that, to where I can use my full 6 points, get it down to 1.5 with the Vikings at home. Who doesn't like the Vikings -1.5 at home against the Lions? So, to me, that looks like a really good line for me to tease already. You see some of them that are at 7. That's like one of the worst lines to tease, because you're at 7, you're going down to 1. You only went through 3, but at 7.5, we're going through the 7 and 3. So that's what I'm looking at. You got this New Orleans at Washington, where Washington is getting 1.5. If you like Washington at home here against New Orleans, you could bump them up to 7.5. So, reverse kind of thought. I do like, a lot of times in these early lines, I'm looking at the numbers more so than the teams. And then I look at the team and then think, is that a game that I like if I add the 6 points? But yeah, you just, some of the numbers sticking out right away to me are some of the interesting games, I should say. I was kind of interested to see that the Bengals are only 3.5, getting 3.5 at home against the Packers. The Steelers are -1.5 against the Broncos, whose defense to me is one of the best in the NFL. I thought that was a really odd line. Yeah, just kind of looking here. I think the Broncos are a team that I'm interested in right away. But yeah, just as far as me, teasing different teams, that's what I generally like to look at on Tuesday. I'd like to lock in them lines that are right at that special number that I like to dip.
Yeah, you like the teasers early on in the week. I like trying to find lines I think are going to adjust on teams that I like. So the first one that stood out to me is the Buffalo Bills going into Kansas City. On our list says 2.5. It's already at 3 on FanDuel, but I think this one will bounce back towards maybe Kansas City -2. Maybe it stays at 3. We know that the home field is worth 3 points, but I think Buffalo wins this game. So the more points I can get on them, the more I'm going to jump on it. So I like that one right off the rip. Another one, a total, I think seems a little bit too high here, is Cleveland and the Chargers sitting at 49.5. We've seen both teams play pretty well defensively. The Chargers had a few minor meltdowns last night, let a few guys behind them, but this Cleveland offense kind of struggled with Minnesota, but their defense looked great as well, holding that Vikings team to just 7 points last week. So I think there's value in that. I think that total ticks down a little bit. So I want to jump on that one at 49.5 while it's up there a little bit too high. And I agree on Washington. I like the football team here in this game. We know the Saints are going to be Jekyll and Hyde. You're never going to get a consistent performance out of them. But this one that has already gone to Washington +2.5. So maybe jumping on that one early didn't pay off. But if I can get to 2.5 on this one, I think this one closes at probably New Orleans -1. So you're still getting 1.5 of value on that one. So again, you don't want to bet on everything. We're not going to bet on every game. We're not going to, look at every spread early and say, yes, there's value on this. Some aren't going to move much at all. And as we go throughout the week, we'll continue to monitor the line movements and see where some of the big money's coming in, Scott. But any other thoughts here? So again, for me, under in Cleveland and the Chargers. I like Buffalo in that game at Kansas City, and I like Washington at home against New Orleans as early lines I want to attack.
Yeah, one that kind of was glaring out while you were talking was jumping out at me. The Titans are only giving Jacksonville 4 points. So to me, that seems to be a really cheap buy at this point. To me, Henry and them boys should be at least a touchdown. I don't care what receivers are missing. Urban Meyer, we've already seen he's been such a distraction to that team, especially what's been going on this week. So I heard there's a lot of meetings today there in Jacksonville with the owner. So I think Urban's already pretty much lost that team. Obviously, we saw Tennessee lose to the Jets. There ain't no way in hell they're going to lose to the Jets and Jacksonville back-to-back. So I think the Titans are going to mollywop the Jags here. So I think I might jump on the Jags here right when we jump off here before that line gets up even higher and higher. But yeah, Tennessee, give me Tennessee in that one. That line seems fishy.
Yeah, well, it's hard to trust them when they go to the Jets and lose on the road. We don't know if Julio or A.J. Brown are going to be back, so I'm assuming this line is without that. So you really have nothing to lose by going early. If both receivers are announced in, that line probably moves up to -6, I would guess. So it's a sharp one to jump on early. A lot of times when there's injuries, the books aren't sure who's going to play, who's not. If you take an educated guess, and even if you don't, I don't think it affects you jumping early on. If they don't play, the line probably doesn't move at all. If they do, you're going to get a couple points in your advantage. So just some of the little quirks in the betting market. A couple other notes. Thursday night looks like a fun one. Rams in Seattle, 54-point total there. So we will have you covered on Thursday discussing that game, our favorite bets, our favorite props, and, of course, Thursday Night Football on all the different sites out there, FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, Underdog. So we'll take a deep look at that game. Also, we'll have our first London game of the year. And poor folks in England get the Jets and Atlanta. So I know the Jets are riding high here, but not our finest product traveling overseas here, Scott.
Oh, man, them poor people over there. I actually know a fella through some old work channels that's a huge Lions fan, and he's stuck over there. And he usually tries to get to these games and the different NFL games, and they're just so happy to have the product over there. I don't think they really care. Obviously, with the COVID thing going on in the last year, not much of that was going on. So, hey, it's good for those guys to get over there. With the travel and everything else, I don't know how much of a pain in the ass it's going to be anymore. Like going through the, all the COVID protocols from country to country. So hopefully that isn't any kind of issues for these guys. But it'll be interesting to see, who them fans are rooting for. Are they going to root for the Jets, or are they going to root for Atlanta? So I'm going to guess they might go with the New York team, but we'll see. That'll be interesting, which, usually the better team gets all the fans, like the Cowboys or, somebody like that. But yeah, with these two cellar dwellers, let's see who they root for.
Yeah, speaking of that, it was pretty crazy last night. We didn't talk a ton about last night's game, so let's spend a minute on it. But the LA fans coming out in droves to support the Raiders. I mean, they were almost the home team in that game. It was such a loud ovation. The Chargers come running out. They're getting booed. So it was quite interesting. It's just good to see LA interested in football. We've heard the talks years and years and years. This is why they don't have many teams, because the fans don't come out and support the team. But clearly a lot of LA fans still holding on to the Raiders.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see. But I think I mentioned that a week or two ago with the Chargers. I mean, they're really, all their home games haven't been true home games for them. So, yeah, they don't have that fan base yet. I don't know how far it is from San Diego to get over there to LA, but I've been to both cities. I think they're pretty far from each other. But, so, yeah, but that was a fun game to watch, though, last night, to be truthful, the way it was. both fans cheering. It kind of reminded me of being in like a Vegas casino. I mean, you got people cheering for everything. It
Yeah.
was kind of cool. So, but yeah, speaking of the casinos and sports books, if none of you guys have ever had a chance to get down to a game, especially some big games when there's a bunch of games going on, like a Saturday college football. I mean, if you like that type of atmosphere, you got all kinds of people cheering and yelling. Then you get the one loud guy who's got all kinds of money on something, who's just ecstatic about his bet. Or you might have that dude throwing his chair down. I mean, yeah, it's good times. I like going down the casino with all the different people and all the different cheering every which way. So that did remind me of that.
Yeah, it's always a fun atmosphere. So, plenty of places around town right now, or wherever you're listening. I'm sure you have access to a sports book near you. If not, if you haven't been, like Scott said, it's definitely an experience. So it's fun to bet mobile for sure. Life is easy that way, but being there, being enthralled in everything, in the action and the emotions, is a lot of fun. So don't do yourself a disservice. Make sure you guys experience that. So. All right, Scott, let's wrap up today's show with some baseball. We have the playoffs kicking off today, just one game today. We have the Yankees in Boston. We'll save our best bets here for the end of the show, so stay tuned and listen for that. But quick overview here. Get the playoffs started. Any fantasy action for you here on this game? One-game setups here across the industry, but quick thoughts here on this one. And the rest of the playoffs kicking off. I know you're excited to get the playoffs up and rolling here in baseball.
Yeah, I love playoff baseball, but I did, like I was telling you yesterday on the show, I just was kind of breaking down the bracket and the matchups, who's going to end up getting who. Like I said, I already did bet on your Brewers to hopefully I didn't jinx them for you, but I did bet on your Brewers. I just like where they were sitting in the bracket, how the Dodgers and San Fran were going to have to face each other right away if the Dodgers do get through the Cardinals. So I thought with that pitching staff, that was a really good bet to win the World Series. But tonight's game, obviously one of the best rivals in sports, the Yankees in Boston. But I'll tell you what, if I'm a Yankees fan, I am really, really concerned about Garrett Cole. He's been getting hit pretty hard lately, so the last 4 or 5 starts haven't been the greatest for him. So I think tonight I'm going to lean the Red Sox tonight, and I do like the over 8 in this game. I think Evaldi's going to end up giving up a few runs. But the one thing I can say that I do like, you mentioned a bet. I do like Garrett Cole's over K-prop of 7.5. You get it at plus 122. I mean, I still think he could get 8 or 9 Ks. He could still give up 4 or 5 runs. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, fun game. They always hype it up really good. So. Should be a fun night to watch some baseball.
Yeah, I actually like the under here, so we'll see. I guess go with whatever one of us you like best on the total. But one of the props I like here is Rafael Devers' home run. I know you had listed it as well, but a pretty good history against Garrett Cole for Rafael Devers. 3 home runs in 21 at-bats, so 9 RBIs over that sample size. So if you're playing fantasy, I think he's in a good spot. You mentioned some of the concerns with Cole. The strikeouts are going to be there, but just doesn't look as dominant as we've seen him look in the past. That being said, I do like both of these pitchers tonight. I think they're going to do their part here, and we know when playoffs roll around, it really starts to turn into the pitching becomes so important. Every at-bat is crucial. The offenses just generally don't perform as heavy as they do in the regular season. So that's what tends to lean me to the under. But with you on the over, maybe we just leave the total alone on this one. Play some fantasy, play some props, but really like that Devers home run call. Another one I really like is Stanton plus 270. So decent odds there, but that Devers one really stood out at plus 450. So Scott, any props you like here for tonight? I know you had listed some home run props. I know Devers was one of them. I know Stanton was one of them. So we're kind of on the same page with those two. I know you got a couple other guys you got your eye on here tonight.
Yeah, mentioning that total on the over-under, now that I think about it, I think I'd just rather recommend you go the over in the first 5 because I'm basing this off of Cole giving up those runs. And as you mentioned, playoff baseball is a lot about matchups. Granted, now these pitchers do have to see 3 hitters. But, I mean, these guys have such a short leash. And I can tell you in a 1-game elimination game, if Cole gets in trouble in the first inning, he's out. I mean, they're not going to let him give up 4 runs in the first inning. So yeah, I mean that is what the interesting part is in a game like this tonight. So yeah, if I was to go the over here, you're probably right. I would go the first 5 innings. You got some guys here to record 2 hits too. Which is pretty tough. You got some pretty good odds on some guys that I was just kind of looking at. You mentioned Devers. You mentioned his BVP against Cole. I mean, Devers is plus 220 to get 2 hits tonight. So I don't mind that. I am on the Red Sox tonight, so I'm definitely looking at Devers. I like a guy like Bogarts, Kike. I like to sing that song. Kike, do you love me? Every time
Oh
I
yeah.
put him in, I can help it. I sing it every time. I swear, every time I click his name, I sing it. So, but yeah, I think the Red Sox team total over 3.5 is my favorite play today. So if to break it all down, that is my top play. But I do like the over in the game. But I like the Red Sox over 3.5 team total for me.
All right, there you go. So best bets for me under 8. We're gonna go head to head here, and love that Devers prop. There's some other guys I think would be very productive in this game. Anthony Rizzo, solid history against Eovaldi. Guys like Judge and Stanton have done well against them as well. So we know BVP is not everything, but I always think it's a very important part of the equation. And when we say BVP, if you're new, it's just batter against pitcher. Their history there, and we know baseball, these guys are creatures of habit. Some will tell you the sample size is never high enough. It's too small, but I still find it interesting and another data point that we can look at. So that will do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow with our KMA segment. We'll continue to look at the NFL line, see if we see anything of note there. We'll continue our look at some of the injuries in the NFL, discuss more in baseball with the playoffs kind of getting in even more of a full swing. Eventually, we'll start working some NBA here in as well. So exciting times here at Woodward Bets. Scott, any final thoughts here for the people on this Tuesday?
No, let's sit back, watch some baseball. Gonna have to turn the heat on. Maybe it's getting a little chilly around here in Metro Detroit. But other than that, gonna enjoy some baseball, and we'll be back tomorrow and talk about some more action.
Absolutely. So I want to thank each and every one of you for watching the show. If you want to support the show, simple ways to do that. Follow us on Twitter at Woodward Bets. Follow the network at Woodward Sports, and head over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code WSN while you are there. For Scott, for our boy Sawyer behind the glass, making us look good. Not an easy job, so thank you, Sawyer. I am Beer saying salut. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.